You ever feel like church is a whole bunch of do's and don'ts? And a lot of times we feel there's just a whole bunch of don'ts. But actually, if we look at the Bible, there's probably a lot more do's than there are don'ts. But as we go through the book of James, there's actually a lot of don'ts and a lot of do's that he has. Just a short list, really quick, that we've looked at already. James said, don't play favorites. Don't use your mouth to praise God and then go speak evil against people. Don't use your words to attack other people, but use your words to build people up. Don't use your words to twist things to your own advantage. Don't rely on your own finances, your own strength in life, because those can actually cause divisions in God's community. And it's also arrogant for us to believe that our wealth or our skills are going to be around forever to take care of us. So don't do that, because one day your wealth is going to just rot like we are. Not very encouraging. But instead, James says this is what we should do. We should live with patience, we should live with perseverance, and we should live with hope. Hope that one day, we don't know when, but one day God will make everything right. And if it's not here, then God's going to make everything right when Jesus returns. So there's this huge list of things that really God wants us to be doing that I hope we could be encouraged by, that we should love others, that we should forgive others, that we should give to the poor, that we should pray, that we should meditate, that we should sing, we should gather together, we should eat together, we should eat healthy, we should grow in grace, we should live the right way, we should be happy, we should show mercy, we should be trustworthy. There's so many things that we should do. And then a lot of the things that we shouldn't do are probably pretty good things. Don't murder. That's a pretty good thing. Don't hate. Don't commit adultery. Those are all very good things. Don't play favorites. Don't speak evil about people. Those are all really good things. It is incredible to me how much we as a nation are hurting, and how much division there is, and how much hate there is, and how quickly we are set off against one another. That I hope the thing that James tells us to do this week could be something that could truly help us and help our hearts, but it's not easy. It can be one of the most difficult things to actually do. James begins to add things to do to his writing, to his letter, meaning three things: be patient, have perseverance, and trust and have faith as you wait. That's what faith looks like for James, especially when you face challenges of many kinds, like James talked about. You be patient, you persevere, and you keep trusting. So we're going to look through James chapter 5, verses 7 through 11, a couple verses at a time, and pause and reflect on what James is trying to teach us about important things to do. Now, keep in mind, this for James and for the people reading his letter is a time of poverty. It's a time of persecution. It's a time of difficult struggle. People had lost their jobs. They had lost their homes. They'd been scattered. So it's really difficult times. And during these types of times, this is what James says in verse 7 of chapter 5. Be patient then, my brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. Two words that are really hard to apply. Be patient. I don't like to be patient, and I don't know many people who do, but when you're going through something, the worst thing somebody can tell you is be patient, right? Because you don't want to be patient, and it feels even worse when people say to you, be patient. And in life, especially when we face challenges of many types, as we're waiting on God and we want a new opportunity, James says, don't lose perspective, right? So becoming patient helps us to protect or hold on to the right perspective. When we lose our patience, when we become impatient, we begin to lose perspective. And so I hope you could really see that when we're patient, right, we can see things the right way. It's like somebody getting doing a mistake, right, to you. I remember a few weeks ago I shared that I was cleaning some dishes in the sink, and Patty dropped some spaghetti sauce, and it went all over me, all over my leg, all over my shoes. My shoes are white, right, and red spaghetti sauce. And I just sort of sat there, kept cleaning the dishes, right? What could I do? What could I do? And in that moment, Patty said, "You are so patient." And I thought, in that moment, I probably was. Yeah, I'm not the most patient person in the world. But in that moment, like, what mattered most to me was not the sauce that got smushed in my leg hair, right? The red sauce on my white shoes. What mattered more to me was Patty. I didn't care about my shoes. I didn't care about my leg. I didn't care about the sauce. It didn't matter. Like, what matters most in that moment is Patty. And that's the right thing to matter, right? She is the most important thing. So being patient helped me to keep perspective. But if in that moment, right, in that moment, I just got mad that there was spaghetti sauce on my leg, or in that moment, I really got mad that my shoes now were probably stained with spaghetti sauce, I would have lost perspective, because I would have actually put more importance on my shoes than I would have put on my wife, which is absolutely backwards. So when we become impatient as life comes at us and we go through life, we begin to lose perspective. So James says, be patient because God's going to come. We don't know when, but we know he will come. And so James goes on to give some examples to help us see in real day life how we could look at a couple examples and learn from these people. In verse 7 and 8, he says this: see how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. So in this context of being patient, one of the people he chooses to use as an example is a farmer. Now, what's really interesting to me is, I don't know if you're a farmer or not, but I do not look at farmers as unbusy people. I look at farmers as incredibly busy, incredibly hardworking people. That there's always something to do. So don't think of the word be patient as do nothing. Right? Be patient and wait for God does not mean you sit there and do nothing while you wait for God. I mean, a farmer is waiting, but there's also an aspect of anticipation. So in the midst of a trial, we want things to change right now. But I mean, think of all of the things that farmers do, right? So if you think of being patient as doing nothing, that wouldn't actually fit James's understanding of God, his experience with God, or what he's writing about a life following God, because he's talking about actions, right? Things that can be seen as faith. So James wouldn't say, just sit and wait, just sit and be patient, meaning do nothing. But think about the farmers. They have to prepare the land. They have to clear the land. They have to get it all ready. They have to plant the seed. They have to water the seeds. They have to fix up the tractors. They have to feed the horses. They have to repair the tools, paint the barn, fix the fence, pull out weeds, take care of animals. They have to pay their bills. They have to order more supplies. And this is just while the seeds are being taken care of, right? While they're potentially going to grow, while they will at some day bear fruit. There's so much to do. Right, so the same is true for James. What he says is, in life, you need to wait, you need to be patient for God, but you also need to go and do things while you wait on him. There are endless needs in the world, right? And James is about faith in action. So don't just wait like you're going into a doctor's appointment and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. Wait like the farmer waits. In verse 9, he says this: don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at your door. Because when do we tend to snap at people more? When we're stressed, when we're upset, when we're impatient, when things don't go our way. So what James is saying is, while you're waiting for your situation to change, while you're wanting God to answer and he hasn't answered, that's probably a time where we begin to treat people poorly, because we're getting frustrated, we're getting stressed, we're getting upset that things aren't going our way. So if that happens, when that happens, James says, don't grumble against one another. Don't get mad at one another. Be patient. He goes on in verse 10 and 11 to give us another example, saying, brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You've heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. So then James gives another example of the prophets in general and of Job. People who spoke up for God, people who were faithful to God, but yet life didn't go how they want. People don't always listen to prophets. Sometimes they reject prophets, right? Jeremiah was called the weeping prophet because he was so struggling with how much the people rejected him and God that it brought him to tears. Job went through so many trials and still in the midst of those trials remained faithful. So here James is pulling out examples saying, we count as blessed those who persevere. You've heard of people's perseverance, like the prophets, like Job, and you've seen what God finally did. Think of their reward. So they actually need to be our example. So James responds and tries to remind us there's a lot of things we need to keep in mind. People are blessed if they persevere. God is full of compassion and mercy. We need to be careful how we treat people. Being patient is never about a lack of action. Being patient is a part of us being able to stand firm, and being patient is a part of us actually seeing God. That God's people really are called to wait on God with patience and endurance, trusting that God will set all things right. This is a passage out of Matthew chapter 24 where we see Jesus beginning to allude to things not necessarily going the right way or the best way or an ideal way, but how we need to respond and what could happen when we don't respond by faith. In verse 9, he says this, "You will be handed over to be persecuted, and you will be put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other because of the increase of wickedness. The love of most people will grow cold, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved." There's going to be a time where things are going to get hard, and there's going to be a time where we need patience, and we need perseverance, and we need trust. And a lot of times, the only way we develop those is when we go through difficult times, undesirable situations. But those are the times that we can learn to grow in God. Keep in mind, James was a leader in the church in Jerusalem for 20 years, extremely difficult times, somebody who was murdered for his own faith as well. He writes that some of the greatest blessings in life come when we don't take matters into our own hands, but when we let God handle them and we trust God to work. We don't know the timing, but we are patient, we are persevering, and we're trusting God, and we just keep doing the right things every single day. And then we be patient and we wait for God to come. And he says, this is when you will be blessed, because the people of God who did this, whether it was here on earth or later in heaven, they experienced the blessings of God. It's two of the hardest words for us to actually apply and often hear, be patient. But it's what James knows we need the most as we go through this life, to be patient, to persevere, and to trust in God at all times, that in the right way, at the right time, God will make things right. God bless.